I encourage you to watch every chance that you ever get to have yourself recorded, because what happens when we think that we are doing a certain way, it's like, oh, it's typically not what's really going on. That when you see yourself on film, that's reality, that's the truth. What we think is going on is our self-censored, edited, sanitized version of what we think. And often, how we think we are is typically worse than how we really are, because we are hypercritical human beings. And then I always recommend watch them more than once. The first time is to get over the shock and horror of seeing yourself on video. And then the second one is to really assess, oh, I did this part really well. Wow, I can really work on that. Or I had no clue I was doing that. So again, the first time is so important. Just sit with the angst and anxiety and then watch it again, because that's where the real content comes out. So how long do you think a person's attention span is? Yell it out.
6 seconds.
6, 20?
In person or online? Does it matter?
Both. Both.
I would say in person 10 seconds.
10 seconds?
I'll say 10 seconds.
10 seconds? Okay, it's 8 seconds.
Wow.
8 seconds. It used to be 12 seconds in 2020. Now it's 8 seconds, thanks to our cell phones and all the social media going on. A goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds. So our attention, yes, our attention span is less than that of our goldfish. How sad is that, right? But why do we think that statistic is important to know?
Gotta catch them.
You got to catch them at the beginning, right? And our minds wander. We're built for that, right? So why do you think that is, that we have such a short attention span? One of the reasons is it's built into our DNA. It's all about, you know, the fight or flight mode that we are still built in with. Like if you're a saber-toothed tiger, you're the caveman back in those days, and you round a corner and you come across a saber-toothed tiger, you don't have a lot of time to go, oh, I like his spots, right? It's just like, he looks really hungry. He's such a cool looking cat. No, they're going to be eating you by then. So you have to decide instantly, am I going to eat him or is he going to eat me? That is still going on in our mind today. We are wired to be constantly assessing not only what's directly in front of us, but what's going on the side, what's going around there. Oh, she's taking a drink out of something. I wonder what that is. Oh, she just put something down. Are they paying attention to me? Do they think I'm really knowing what I'm talking about? All this is going on in our brains at the same time. Whether you're in a class, whether you are driving down the road, the attention span is built around our assessment of risk. And, you know, we get bored easily. So when you're talking about social media or what you're putting into your content, it's really important to grab them out of the gate, but also to keep their attention. If that's the attention span, I want to get into the first impressions. So if we're talking about a first impression that people make visually, like if you think about the second you saw me, that very first second you saw me walk in the door, that's what a first impression is. So how long do you think it takes to make up your mind about somebody visually the first time you see them?
It's like 2 or 3 seconds.
2 or 3 seconds?
Well, like less probably, right?
Less?
Right when you see him, it's like, or.
Yep. How about you?
Probably shorter than your attention span.
Okay, it's 1/10 of a second. Yeah, 1/10 of a second, of course, is not a lot of time. And again, it goes back to our, caveman days when you're looking at risk and danger. The challenge with that is it depends on how you look at that moment in time. People make up their assessment about you because it's like, oh, they look confident, they look competent, they look comfortable, they look friendly. What else do you think we're looking at in that 1/10 of a second?
Clothing.
Clothing, yep.
Age,
Clothing, age, hairdo.
Wearing.
Yeah, it's like how we look, but beyond the exterior, what we're wearing, and like if you're wearing makeup or not. What do you think some of the qualities about our humanness are we looking up and picking up on?
Clear eyes,
Clear eyes,
right? Like
Stance.
the stance.
Yeah,
Yep, the stance, right. So like if I came in, look, kind of like this,
yeah.
versus coming in like this, right? What would you think if I came in like this?
An introvert.
Yeah, introvert. I'm intimidated. It's like, whoa, I'm shy, I'm not comfortable, right? If I come in like this, it's typically I'm comfortable, right? So another thing that people can pick up on instantly is trust. I trust this person. So what do you think we're looking for with that big word, trust? Anything come to mind with, like, if you're trustworthy versus not? How do you think that appears in your face if you're trustworthy?
Friendly.
Openness.
Yeah, openness, and if you're smiling. So a really interesting study was done many years ago where they took members of the public and they took real candidates of the Senate and Congress and governors. So it was like congressional, Senate candidates, and then candidates running for governor. And what they did is they put people and they would flash these real candidates in front of their eyes for a tenth of a second. So they'd have multiple candidates for a tenth of a second. So you're looking at these pictures going by really fast. Now they were able to predict with about 76% predictability success who the winners were of the Senate after only looking at them for a tenth of a second. So again, if they were able to achieve that high percentage, what do you think that we can pick up on in a tenth of a second when we're looking at people's faces?
Smile.
The smile. Do they look friendly? Do they look scary? And again, friendly and scary is components of risk and trust. Can I trust this person? Are they light? Are they confident and competent? Or do they look like I cannot trust them because they're hiding something if they're not smiling?
Well, unfortunately, racial profiling really, goes.
Racial profiling could be, it's always been a big deal, right? But again, a lot of the candidates that were the winners were of, not white. But so again, that is a component.
Yeah.
But again, for sure. And then the governors was like 68% accuracy. So again, if you look at, if any of you watch the State of the Union address, when both houses of Congress are there, there's like 650 members combined. So you're talking about 3/4 of that entire body could have been picked in a tenth of a second just by looking at the winners. It's really interesting that you can figure out about people really quickly. So it's the good news, bad news, because then it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on us, if we will, to really show up as we want to show up, right? So again, and what do you think that also means that we need to figure out? We need to figure out who our audience is. Because who do we want to be, which I think you heard a lot about yesterday, but then also, who is our audience and who are we being for our audience? Because, for example, if your audience is a bunch of yoga instructors, right? Yoga instructors, meditative people, right? But if you show up in a suit and you're talking to people and they're all in their tights and leotards and their flowing, yoga clothes, it's kind of like a disconnect, right? Similarly, if you showed up in your yoga pants and a t-shirt and you're talking to Silicon Valley executives, that would be a disconnect, right? If you're talking to members of a police association, how do you think you would dress?
In a suit.
Nice.
In a suit?
Nice.
Or at least, like a golf shirt and slacks. You wouldn't dress up in your sweatpants and a t-shirt, or maybe not even in a 3-piece suit, right? So again, it's like, who are you and who are you trying to address, right? And my guidance is you want to be similar, because if it's a disconnect, then you always are overcoming that disconnect with who you are. And it can be a challenge if people are looking at you in a tenth of a second going, why are they here, right? They don't look like they belong here. And a lot of times, not all the times, a lot of times that initial interpretation is hard to overcome. Over time, you can, learn more about people and go, oh, they're not a big jerk like I thought they were. Or similarly, oh, I thought I could trust them and they stabbed me in the back, right? that can come later. But again, that first impression is often hard to overcome. So now if it's a tenth of a second making up our minds about somebody with how they look, how long do you think it takes by how they sound? A third of a second. So a third of a second is about how long it takes to say the word hello, which again is not a long time. So this is one of the reasons why years ago phone screening for interviews became such a big deal. Anybody gone through a phone screen interview?
Sound confident.
Yep.
You know, they have clear, not necessarily pronunciation, but when they're talking, they're
Right.
like,
Yeah, very
Oh,
clear,
yes,
concise.
yeah.
Confident, competent.
yeah.
They know what they're
exactly.
talking. They know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
They're not wasting your time. You're not going to waste their time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, you can pick up on this really quickly based on the how you sound. Because again, if you're uncomfortable, if you're nervous, that really picks up in the tone of your voice. If you're tired, if you don't feel good, if you're stressed and anxious, that also sounds up in your voice. If you're confident, if you're feeling like you're going to knock it out of the park, you can pick that up in the sound of your voice. Right? So again, it's very, very, very important to figure out who your audience is, how you need to sound. And even if you may not be feeling well or if you're feeling tired, if you're booked for a video, guess what you get to do? You get to pretend that you're all that, right? And you get to bring it. Unless your audience is one where you need to be true and authentic, and if you're not feeling good, then you can be open and tell your audience, I'm not feeling good today. You know, if you're like me, I know you've had those days where things just aren't going good. You know, right? Do you get what I mean? Right. So again, it depends on your audience. If you can let your hair down and be one with them and really share what you're going through, then you can have the luxury of doing that. A lot of times we don't have that luxury. So every time that you're going through all of this stuff, you get to figure all of this stuff out. Can I share what I'm really feeling? If I can't, okay, I can't. I need to wick it up and pretend. And I have a fun activity. I'm going to start explaining a little bit, and then I'm going to set you loose to do the activity. Everybody will need your cell phone for this activity. You're going to be getting with a partner, right? And so how you're going to determine who is A and who is B is so A is taller, B is shorter. And then you're going to get with your partner and you're going to switch phones. And you're going to record, so B will record A on A's phone. And then A will record B on B's phone, okay? Right, so A, so I want you to answer this question. If you're at a networking group and somebody says, so what do you do? I want you to give your standard, normal 30-second elevator pitch. Go.
I'm a video production professional. I'm a current student. I work at Digital Mass.
If you can, do 30 seconds, but it's also interesting to see how long people talk.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I work with people on is your inner time clock. And some people think if they're talking for 30 seconds, they're really talking for 3 minutes. And some people will talk for 3 minutes thinking it's 30 seconds.
They just don't have that
And they have no sense of how long that they talk. All right, so
Same people.
A's, you're going to answer this question, okay? So if you remember back to when you were learning how to drive a car, what was the funniest story that you can remember for 30 seconds?
Can you give them a second to think of it?
So what did the bees, did the bees notice anything different about the A's from the first question to the second question? Like did their body
I
language
felt like
shift?
you were trying to go longer, but I didn't know if you realized you didn't go any longer. Not much.
How about your body language? Was the body language different?
A little bit more animated. Yeah.
Did you notice any difference in
A bit more relaxed.
relaxed?
More Latin.
How about you?
I was gonna say you actually looked like you were happy both times.
Ah,
Smiling.
yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
I love what I
So-
do, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Because typically they are different types of questions, right? How are the two questions I asked different?
One's like on the spot and you're trying to prove yourself. One you're trying to tell what you said, a funny story. So
Right.
like you're trying to be funny, you're trying to bring a little funny
Right.
energy.
Yeah. One is work related and one is like a
Fun.
memory of an experience.
Yeah.
But I also put in the word funny.
Yeah.
What is a funny story? I didn't say what is your scariest story, right? Which some of those are pretty funny. But again,
Yeah.
some of them can be, so again, it's like you always want to be listening to these cues that people can be telling you. And importantly, what are these cues that your clients are telling you or that your audience is telling you, right? Because people will be sending these signals to you, and it's really important as business owners or as employees to be aware of these signals, because it could dramatically change how you respond to them. And how you respond to them may sink, or you may sink your chances or improve your chances to be successful with them. Time to switch. So now bees, you get to answer a question. Okay, so bees, here's your question. All right, so when somebody is, again, when you're at a networking event, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition? Go. So this is so perfect because it's just like, oh my God, because you're being distracted by the noise. But again, there are some networking events where it's like speed dating.
Totally.
It's totally, it's like literally you're in a line here, you're talking, and like every minute, next, and those are really awesome because it's fast paced and you have to keep up and you have to know what you're going to say, right? So again, regardless of what's going on, so this is something that you can work on, right? Is just what is it that you're going to say and be able to say it regardless of what's going on. Like if you're up here being filmed and then like half of the room literally got up and walked out the door, what would you do? Would you be able to still keep going on regardless of what's going on, right? Or I do this all the time with my clients. It's like I'll turn on the coffee maker and it'll all of a sudden start grinding and coughing, and it's just like, oh, right? Because again, if you're giving a presentation in front of a bigger audience, guess what's going to be there? Distractions. Distractions. People will be coughing, they'll be chit-chatting with each other, their phones will go off, people will be getting up, walking out on you, they'll be coughing, sneezing, laughing, or doing whatever, and guess what you get to do?
Keep going.
You
Stay
get to
focused.
keep going, because what does that show? It's like you're comfortable, you're competent, you're not going to be taken out by things going on. So again, this is brilliant because we get to practice it here versus like if you're going to be like somewhere else. But again, here's the other thing, is both of those business questions you need to know cold. Because some people may not ask you what it is that you do. They may lead with, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition? So how many B's, raise your hand if you're expecting me to ask the same question that I asked A.
50-50.
Yeah?
I know, now that
Were
you
you
said that.
expecting it? All right.
Little bit,
So
yeah.
how many of you
My
were
brain wanted you to ask the same
to ask the same
Right.
question?
Correct, yeah.
How many of you were answering the question that I asked A? Like, what is it that you
Little
do?
Yeah,
A little
I
bit.
remembered
Yeah.
my story.
Right. Because again, this is such a brilliant exercise because we are human and we think we're really good listeners, but we really aren't. Because every time somebody asks a question, what are we doing?
Thinking
We're
about the
answering the
next.
question.
Right.
Even if somebody else is answering our question, we're answering it too.
How would I answer this question?
Right, which really deflects and diminishes our ability to really listen to what people are saying because we're in our head answering that same question, right? So then again, it's just like somebody may come and say, oh, what were you saying? Right, and it's a human nature, but again, it's like be aware, and this goes back to the attention span, right? It's like how can you remain focused and in the present moment where you're really listening to somebody, especially if they're a potential client, right? All right, so B, here is your second question. So if you were to get a first or a second tattoo, what would it be and where would you put it? Go.
I have one.
Oh, okay. The reason why I like asking this question is the first question was a trip down memory lane. It's something that most of us,
We have 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Most of us have really experienced, right? Because, you know, when we learn how to drive, although I'm learning, not everybody learns how to drive now. But it's something that we did. So it's a memory, it's an experience, and then usually as time goes by, we can look back on it with humor. The other question, the tattoo, is an imagine if question. Because a lot of people don't have a tattoo. A lot of people would never in a million years get a tattoo. And so this is something that often engenders resistance. Right? It's just like, I will never get a tattoo. You know, and it's almost as if you're saying, I'm going to make you get a tattoo this afternoon. So tell me what it is and where you want to put it. Right. So again, it's an awareness of what are you asking people and what is the potential response they may get. And if you start noticing resistance coming up for people, then you can start thinking about, is it the question I asked? Is it the way I asked the question? And then try and understand what is it that they're resistant about, right? And again, a lot of it we have to do this instantaneously. And if you're being videoed, then you know it provides another level of stress. So one of the things I want to touch on before I leave is I always like asking people to introduce themselves for me, just so I can leave you with this. Enunciating is extremely important. So how many times in your lifetime do you think you've said your name?
A million.
Millions of times, right? What do you think the two maybe three most important words that you will ever say in your entire life?
Your name.
Your name, right? So that's one of the reasons why I asked you to repeat the name of your business, because I couldn't understand the name of your business. And most of you, I couldn't understand your name. And here's why. Because we've said it a million times. We know who we are, right? I'm Doris Pickering. But what I've taught myself how to say is I'm Doris Pickering. So again, if you kind of do the imaginary hand goes up with every word, it's not Doris Pickering, it's like Doris Pickering. There's this ever so slight pause there. So Doris Pickering from Silicon Valley Speaks, not Silicon Valley Speaks, right? People tend to merge words together when we are comfortable with those words and we've said them a million times. This is one of the things I really want to leave you with, is as you are standing up here being videoed, be extremely cognizant of how you are enunciating your words. Because I haven't had a chance to listen to anybody else. I could stay for a little bit if you're going to do it, but I listened to you for a little bit when you were up here doing your thing, and it was really wonderful. Two little feedbacks for you. You talk really fast, so again, slow down. Does anybody know how to slow down? How many of you have been told to slow down? A lot of people are always told to slow down. But in my experience, nobody ever tells you how. How do you slow down? And for me, it's basically you want to enunciate your words. So, like, I am an avid swimmer. I'm an avid swimmer, right? And again, it's just when you really take the time to enunciate your words, and you have to practice it. You have to practice it. When do you practice it? Every time you open your mouth. It's not just when you're in front of a camera. It's not just when you're talking to a potential client. It's when you're talking to your dog, when you're talking to your spouse or your friends, when you're in your class. And you can also practice it when you're driving around town, when you're in your shower, when you're cooking. You want to practice enunciating your words, because especially for those of us who talk fast, because I talk fast, it's not natural. And typically when it's not natural, you won't do it. Between people that will enjoy listening to you and really bond with you or not. Because when people cannot understand you, it's too much effort. And then they'll go, oh, I can't understand that guy. I'm going to go over here. Okay?
How do you relate this to how you feel authentically and that doesn't feel authentic? Because we're trying to change how we
Exactly.
speak. But you're like, Doris, I don't talk like that. I'm a slow talker. I'm
Right.
from the South.
Right.
Y'all are from the north, and y'all are fast.
And
talkers.
that's it. That's it.
You know.
So, and that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that, because there is a difference between being authentic and being more effective. Because for me, you can still be your authentic self, talking a little bit slower and enunciating. Not that many people talk too slow. If you're a naturally born fast talker, your brain is wired to talk fast and hear fast. So when you're listening to a slow talker, it can be agonizing. And again, there's a judgment going, wow, they're really dumb, right? We all think they're dumb because they're talking really slow. But that's how their brain is wired. That's how they naturally talk. And a lot of times it's more relaxing to listen to them than it is trying to keep up in this frenetic pace with a fast talker. And again, because we can't understand all the words you're saying. So typically we're missing probably 30% of the words that you're saying. And it takes a lot of effort and energy, and it causes angst. So that's another job as a presenter, is always tuning into your audience and making sure it's like, how are they feeling, you know? Because again, it's like, oh, you guys are bored out of your mind and wishing I would just leave, right? Or, wow, this is really riveting. Or somebody looks like they're confused, right? You can always need to be checking in. And if, again, I beseech you, if you're a fast talker, you have to enunciate your words. I have to enunciate my words because, again, I am a naturally fast talker. I get really excited, I get animated, and I can check into myself going, I need to wick it down. Another reason why I have taught myself to slow down is because about 70% of my clients are born from a different country. And so English is their second language. And so how many of you that are born here struggle with other people's accents that weren't born here? Right, so you have to. It's like you can feel that you're listening. It's harder to listen, right? It's an effort. Well, it's the same thing. It's talking fast is almost like another language, where people have to. It's like you have to work at it to understand people that are talking fast. So again, it's just like make it easy for people to understand what you're saying, because when it's easy, people connect with you better. And then when they connect with you better, guess what? They like you better and they trust you more. And then they're willing to give you their money and their time. And then they will refer you to other people. Make it easy for people. Right, and I am not advocating that we all become this vanilla bean standard, because I am you need to be you. What is your personality? You need to be you. What is your personality? And what is your personality? What is your voice? And that's one of the reasons I differentiate myself from Toastmasters, is they, in my opinion, you're putting the round hole in the square peg. This is how you do it, and it's this way or the highway. I am not that. And so again, I want everybody to be understood. You're going to be understood in a different way than what you're going to be understood. That's what I'm after. So especially if you've already been told you talk too fast, take that to heart. If you haven't been told you talk too fast, you probably don't talk too fast, or nobody's told you that, right? So again, I am not advocating to be this vanilla bean, because I rebel against that. But again, for you knowing who you are and being able to show up in your masterful glory, it helps when people can understand you. That's my point.
You tell your second language speakers to tell people they're a second language speaker? To just get the elephant out of the room?
No.
Like, oh, by the way, English
Right.
is not my first language.
Right.
My native language is Spanish.
Right.
Do you tell
I
them to do that?
I don't, because to me it's evident that English is their second language.
Okay.
And a lot of times, some of them come up front apologetic that English is their second language. So that's what I work with them on, is that mind shift of don't apologize. That's who you are. I mean, that should be your source of pride. And for me, it's like, most Americans, how many languages do we speak? one, and we butcher that half the time, right? A lot of foreign-born people speak 3 or 4 or 5 languages. So for me, that's like a hurrah, celebrate it. And also understand you get to work harder when you're here because of you have to think in English and speak in English when it may not be your native language. So to me, you guys are incredible because you're working harder. So again, it's just a mind shift thing. But I don't lead with that because to me, that shouldn't be what you lead with. It shouldn't be. It's just like, this is who I am, period.